साथियों नमस्कार। मैं ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं लूँगा क्योंकि अभी खाने के लिए क्यों भी बन गया है। सो इस सारे चीज़ों को ध्यान में रखते हुए पहला तो चंद शब्द मैं तेलुगु में कहना है, क्योंकि दोपहर को जितना भी यहाँ आंध्र प्रदेश और तेलंगाना के साथियाँ हैं वो सारे लोग मेरे से उम्मीद रखा कि तेलुगु में कुछ बात रखिए। मैंने इस कुछ चंद दिनों पहले కొద్ది రోజుల క్రితము మా ఇంటికి గద్వాల్ అనేది మహబూబ్ నగర్ జిల్లా చివరిన అంచున ఉన్నటువంటి ఊరు నుంచి ఒక రైతు మా ఇంటికి వచ్చింది. ఆయన ఒక్కడు రాలేదు, వెంట తల్లిని తీసుకొని వచ్చాడు. ఇద్దరు కూర్చున్నాక ఆమె వాళ్ళ కుటుంబ గాథంతా చెప్తూ వచ్చింది. ఆమె పెద్ద కొడుకు కొద్ది రోజుల క్రితం సూసైడ్ చేసుకునే ప్రయత్నం చేసిండు. కష్టపడి ఆమె కొడుకును కాపాడుకున్నాడు. రెండో కొడుకు కూడా అప్పుల బారిన పడిపోయినాడు. 3-4 లక్షల అప్పు ఉంది ఆయనకి, వడ్డీతో కలిపితే. అప్పు తీరే మార్గం లేదు. ఈ పిల్లగాడు కూడా ఏమన్నా చేసుకుంటాడేమో అని ఆయన వెంట వచ్చాడు. వాళ్ళ కోరిక ఏంటంటే ముఖ్యమంత్రి సహాయ నిధి నుంచి మాకేమన్నా డబ్బులు దొరికితే కొంతలో కొంత న్యాయం అవుతుంది. నేను ఆయన్ని చాలాసేపు కుటుంబ విషయాలన్నీ అడిగిన. నాకు ఆయనకు ఏం చేయగలను నాకు అర్థం కాలేదు. చాలా విచిత్రమైన పరిస్థితి నాది కూడా. ఆయన్ని అడిగితే ఆయన ఏమన్నాడంటే, నేను చాలా రోజులు హమాలీగా బతికినా నాకు అప్పు లేకుండే, కానీ మా నాయన వయసు మీద పడటంతో వ్యవసాయం చేద్దామని ఊరికి వెళ్ళిన తర్వాత ఆ వ్యవసాయం చేయటం కోసము సీడు పత్తిని ఎంచుకున్న, దాంట్లో ఆదాయం ఉంటుందని. సీడ్ పత్తి వేస్తే నాణ్యమైనటువంటి నాసిరకం విత్తనాల కారణంగా పంట మొత్తం ఎండిపోయిన తర్వాత కనీసం నీళ్లు కూడా పోయినాయి. కొత్తగా బోర్లు వేసిన 2 బోర్లు వేస్తే కూడా నాకు నీళ్లు రాలేదు. ఒక్కటే బోరు కొంచెం నీళ్లు పోస్తున్నాయి. దాంతో అన్న పంట కాపాడుకున్నామంటే విత్తనాలు నాసిరకం కాబట్టి పోయింది నా పంట. మొత్తంగా దెబ్బతినిపోవటంతో అప్పులు మీద పడ్డాయి. అప్పుల వాళ్ళు ఇంటికి వచ్చి బాధిస్తున్నారు. నాకేం చేయాలో తెలియటం లేదు. తల్లి ఓసారి కొడుతుంటే అడ్డం పడి తాను దెబ్బలు భరించింది, కానీ ఆ అబ్బాయికి దెబ్బలు తాకకుండా చూసింది. మొత్తంగా ముచ్చటంతా చెప్పిన తర్వాత అన్నది ఏదో రేషన్ మీద బియ్యం తెచ్చుకొని తింటున్నాం, అవి కూడా చాలాయి కదా, నీకు తెలియని విషయమా అన్నది. ఇంకో పని మాకు రాదు, ఏం చేయాలో తెలియటం లేదని చెప్పి, మరి ఈ తిండికి ఎట్లా వెళ్తుందని అడిగితే ఒక పూట తింటాం రోజుకు అని చెప్పి. ఆ ముసలామె బయటంతా అడుక్కొని వచ్చి మొత్తం కుటుంబాన్ని కాపాడే ప్రయత్నం చేస్తారు. అడుక్కొని వచ్చి పిల్లలకు మాత్రం ఇంకో 2వ పూట పెట్టే ప్రయత్నం చేస్తారు. అంటే ఇది ఒక్క రాములు కథ నేను చెప్పట్లేదు. దాదాపు ఇవాళ 80-90% రైతుల దీనావస్థ ఇదే ఉంది. వ్యవసాయం నుంచి వచ్చేటువంటి ఆదాయం చాలక ఆడవాళ్ళు అయితే చాలా అద్భుతంగా వర్ణిస్తారు. ఎరువులు తెచ్చిపోస్తే, మందులు జల్లితే పంట దక్కకపోయాయి, కరువు వచ్చి పాయాయి, ఏమీ పనులు లేకపోయాయి, చేతులు ముందు పెట్టుకొని కూర్చున్నా. ఎక్కడి నుంచి తేవాలే, పిల్లల్ని ఎట్లా సాధాలి సార్ అని అడుగుతున్నారు. అంటే దాదాపు ఇవాళ అందరి పరిస్థితి ఇదే. చాలా వరకు ప్రైవేట్ స్కూళ్ళల్లో పిల్లల్ని చదివించాలనే ఆరాటం. ఒక్కొక్క ఊళ్ళో 40-50 లక్షల రూపాయలు ట్యూషన్ ఫీజు కడుతున్నారు. ఇంకో బోర్ వేస్తేనైనా నీళ్లు పడతాయేమో అనే ఆలోచనతో బోర్లు వేస్తున్నారు. ప్రతి బోర్ తర్వాత అప్పే మిగులుతున్నది, కానీ నీళ్లు మాత్రం రావటం లేదు. ఒక్కొక్క ఊరు 2 కోట్లు, 3 కోట్లు, 4 కోట్లు బోర్ల కోసము, బావుల కోసం ఖర్చు చేస్తున్న సందర్భం. పెట్టుబడుల కోసం ఎక్కడ దొరికితే అక్కడ అప్పు తెచ్చి వ్యవసాయాన్ని నిలబెట్టేటువంటి ఒక ప్రయత్నం. అయినప్పటికీ కూడా ఎవరికి ఆదాయం చాలక ఇవాళ చాలా ఇబ్బందులు పాలవుతున్నారు. ఈ సందర్భం నుంచి రైతును బతికించడానికి ఏదన్నా చెయ్యాలి అనేటువంటి ఆరాటం మాత్రం ప్రతి ఒక్కరిలోనూ ఉంది. I have come across a farmer very recently, and this particular farmer has come to my house along with his mother. Very rarely they come along with the women folk, but this particular instance the mother was traveling with him. And in the course of conversation I realized this farmer's elder brother attempted suicide, and the poor lady has raised some money and somehow he survived. And she is worried the second son, who is also in very deep debts, may also do the similar thing. So she wants to protect, and therefore she accompanied the son to reach my home. And they have, in the course of the last 2 years, incurred a debt of 4 lakh rupees to dig borewells, to cultivate, the seed cotton, where the seed is used in order to propagate plants. They are purchased by the seed companies. But because of the faulty seeds, the entire crop failed, and government agreed that this has failed because of the companies have given spurious seeds. Now, the government said that the companies must pay the compensation. The compensation has not yet reached the farmers. And the farmers are also under tremendous pressure to repay the loan. This is precisely the situation not only of that particular farmer who met me, but almost every farmer in the Indian subcontinent, without any exception. Every farmer is in very deep debts. They are unable to pay for their expenses, the children's education, and therefore they prefer other occupations and not agriculture as such. It is in this context protecting agriculture becomes important. Farmers always say, when we were engaged in traditional agriculture, cultivating for self-consumption and for the bare minimum facilities, everything worked well. But as soon as we started shifting for commercial agriculture, there we have started facing a very deep crisis. We are unable to pay for our expenses. Not only that, the common opinion is that the farmers are exploited everywhere. They've lost their dignity and self-respect. And therefore farmers say, the first and the most important thing that we demand is self-respect. Wherever we go and talk to the farmers, they say, self-respect is what we require. We are cheated by the traders. We are also cheated by when we go and sell our grain in the market. We also face a lot of problems when we enter the banks or go to a revenue office for basic certificates. It is a struggle for self-respect, so that they have control over their own destiny, over their own life. And how can we really transform this is the most fundamental question. The small industrial lobby is able to get major concessions from the government. And today, they owe something like 7 lakh crores to the banks in the country. No one ever really asked them about it. But when the farmers, really governments want to take up the responsibility and repay the loan of the banks, they always say, why should we give the concession? If we once waive the loan, the farmers get used to it. But they do it every day. And they waive the loans to the tune of 6 lakh crores. They've so far waived the loans of 6 to 7 lakh crores. But then when it comes to farmers, banks are not willing to give the same concession. It is in this context, therefore, the struggle to bring back the agriculture agenda on the mainstream of Indian politics is the central concern. I think our journey has been quite successful in one respect. At least both the state governments and the central governments are now talking about agriculture. And this is the right time to bring back the agricultural issues onto the agenda. In the 60s and 70s, the governments were under a lot of compulsion to take up the issues related to agriculture. The reasons are very simple. In those days, many rich farmers were entered in the politics, and they could really influence the decision making. And these days, the governments are controlled by the contractors and the real estate dealers. And these are the ones who have no concern for agriculture as such. And it is in this context, bringing back agriculture onto the agenda is not an easy task. I fully agree with Yogendra Bhai, that these issues, governments really think that farmers cannot really take up agriculture, they all must leave. And that is the general attitude of the government. And therefore in this context we must pressurize, we must collectively organize the farmers and raise this issue back onto the agenda. Not an easy task, not an easy task at all. In the absence of any credible organization at the village level, all over India, the experience of the farmers' movement is very clear. When it involved a single crop, the movement has been successful. And when it involved a single caste, the movement was very successful. but multi-caste, multi-group social movements to protect the rights of the farmers have not been very strong and very successful in the recent past. We must now overcome those limitations and see that these movements become very powerful. I am always quite hopeful because there are many social movements which have been successful in India. The right to information bill would not have been possible without a social movement. The food security bill is an outcome of prolonged social movement. The concern for the rights of the evacuated persons, the displaced persons is on account of the struggle by Medha Bharkar. And similarly, one such a strong movement, consistent movement on behalf of the farmers has not started. And the significance of this program lies in the fact that this is the first time so many groups have come together and decided to continue the struggle on a consistent basis. So far I have seen in the last 20 years so many farmers organizations, but they have either been limited to small pockets or they could not continue the tempo in the urban areas too, along with the campaigns in the rural area. First time we see small groups are coming together and they are forming an alliance and trying to bring back the farmers' issues onto the agenda. Take the case of Telangana. We have formed a farmers JSC, and everywhere these collectives are coming into existence. That, in my opinion, is a very positive beginning. And our future lies in strengthening these organizations. You strengthen them and you try to mobilize farmers, definitely the agenda of this country will change and farmers will come back onto the agenda. That is the important task that we all have, and some suggestions have already been made by the other speakers. I would not like to repeat them. While endorsing all those things, I would only suggest that unless and until we become strong force, our voice will not be heard. That is what we should learn from various movements. Even Telangana, it was initially, no political party was in favor of Telangana. It started as a non-party movement, but eventually it became such a powerful issue in the state politics that everyone has to reckon with it, deal with it, recognize it, and negotiate with this issue. Similarly, if we are united, we can definitely, not only the government in Delhi, but governments in every state will have to take up these issues very seriously. So that is basically that is what we need to do. And therefore after the next 2 days when we discuss, we should also have a separate session, in my opinion, on the farmers' movements itself. What is the way forward? How can we rebuild the farmers' movement in this country? And how can we really change the political agenda in this country? That should be the central task. If we find an answer, definitely we can build a very powerful farmers' movement. I am quite hopeful because the situation is so bad. Farmers now think the only way out is to wage an organized struggle. Just this morning, as I was about to come to this conference, I met a farmer who came from a district close by. And he says, he is now prepared to join these organizations. And he said, visit our villages and we are prepared to form committees and fight for our rights. So that is the new trend we see everywhere. And wherever we go, we see this kind of a new consciousness in the rural areas. My only humble submission is that we should think of strategies. In the plenaries that we have organized so far, this particular issue is not included. I request the organizers to add this and take up for this issue also for discussion, so that we can, in our final declaration, we could also make some statement on our future strategy. That is very, very important. And I only wish to say that, it's a wonderful conference. We have all, come from such far off places. Therefore, when we disperse, we must go back with a very clear message and with a very clear understanding about our future. And therefore, we can coordinate. There can be a centralized call, but action must be decentralized. Unless and until we decentralize the action, we cannot involve everyone. There can be, when we were launching the Telangana movement, I went to a village and then I met this particular farmer who was a little drunk, and he came to me and he said, you don't have to tell me how Telangana can be achieved. I know everything about it. All that you need to do is to coordinate our efforts. So precisely, this is what we need to do. We need not tell farmers what they should do, but we should coordinate their effort. There are innumerable, struggles that are taking place every day, spontaneous in nature. Out there are protests at the local level, and all these localized protests now must be synchronized into a major movement. How we can do this and how to coordinate this, I think, is the central issue, and I request the organizers to deliberate even on this issue and come out with some strategy. And in the final declaration, we must also make some observations on this particular issue. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.